And test, test, test. We are live with another episode of the Keeg Talks. Last episode was the Keeg Talks, a new history of the DC universe. Today, the Keeg Talks Fantastic Four, specifically a very entry-level podcast episode on Marvel's first family, the Fantastic Four. This is Fantastic Four 101. I'm your host, Dimithri Pereira. And if you're watching us live, you're watching us on youtube.com/The Keeg Show, or to a lesser degree, twitch.tv/The Keeg Show, or back to a more better degree, a podcast, maybe, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, etc., etc. I'm your host, Dimithri Pereira, and if you don't know anything about the Fantastic Four, then this is the place for you. And if you know a little bit about the Fantastic Four, this is also the place for you. And if you know a lot about the Fantastic Four, you know, this might also still be a place for you, but who knows? We are not going in-depth, to where your brain hurts, but it's more about sharing the love of Marvel's first family, especially because the movie, the MCU movie, is coming out, and you know, a lot of people are excited for that. Brian, my guest,
hello.
Captain Comic Rex, are you excited for the Fantastic Four movie?
Oh yeah. It looks pretty great. It was very interesting listening to your Superman 101 that you did a couple weeks ago, because I was like, it's kind of very appropriate that both these movies are coming out this summer within the same month, because I'm picking up a lot of parallels between the Fantastic Four and Superman in terms of the ethos of the characters and what they mean to their universes. We'll get into it as we talk, I'm sure, but it feels very appropriate that we're getting both of these movies within a few weeks of each other.
If anyone, like, you know, started watching this episode or listened to this podcast and they heard the word ethos, I think 10% of people ran away just hearing ethos. They're like, ethos? I don't know what ethos is. What's ethos? I don't know. I'm not here to learn. Why don't we just talk
your
about
ideologies, your morality? Well, I mean, Reed Richards would not be happy to hear we're not here to learn. He would be very disappointed.
We are here to learn. We are here to learn. But hopefully the 10% haven't run away, you know, as of yet. We did an episode, not me and you. I mean, we've done plenty of episodes, but on the Keeg Talks, we did a Superman 101 episode with Maggie, aka Vegan Superkick, where we talked about our love of Superman and just kind of like the broad strokes of like how important this character is. You feel like Fantastic Four is part of that sort of like importance?
Yeah, absolutely, I do. I think when you get right down to it, Superman is the cornerstone of, I mean, not just the DC universe, but the superhero, for lack of a better word, genre in general. But much in the same way, the Fantastic Four are the core element of the Marvel universe. Like, they are truly where the Marvel universe, as we know it today, starts. You know, we obviously can go back to the, you know, Marvel Comics #1 with the Human Torch and Namor, and the first Captain America comic, but like the modern conception of Marvel Comics, the vision of it that really primarily is Jack Kirby and Stan Lee, starts with Fantastic Four #1. And then that whole universe as we know it today really builds out from there, those characters and that story. Like, I think it's important for people to remember that it's not a coincidence that the very first issue of Amazing Spider-Man, not his first appearance, but the very first issue, it's a crossover with the Fantastic Four, right? Like, these were characters that were fundamental to that universe. And while they have kind of waned in popularity over the decades, in the same way that Superman, even though he was super popular, I think his popularity has kind of come and gone in certain ways as well. They are fundamental to their comic book universe and how it builds and develops over time.
Without going into the full sort of history of like DC and Marvel and everything, like, I mean, let's just start with your love of Fantastic Four. When did you discover the Fantastic Four?
That's a great question. So I feel like you and I growing up as children of the 90s, I feel like we kind of grew up in a real low point for the Fantastic Four as a franchise a little bit, right? Because that was the time when like Spider-Man and X-Men, those were the big characters, right? Those were Marvel's crown jewels. And not much has really changed dramatically since then. But, you know, we weren't getting, you know, Fantastic Four. There was one Fantastic Four cartoon that was not as popular as, say, like the Spider-Man cartoon, right? we don't get a movie in that time period until the 2000s. So I feel like we kind of grow up in this weird time where we're more interested in other Marvel characters than we are in the Fantastic Four, right? And I feel like my interest in the Fantastic Four doesn't come until I'm a little bit older, and it probably comes in part from my love of Jack Kirby, which we'll I'm sure get further into, but wanting to kind of look at his earliest Marvel work, and also the Mark Waid, Mike Winergo run of Fantastic Four. That was really the earliest Fantastic Four comic I remember reading. I remember my library growing up had a huge like hardcover volume of like the first 12 or so issues, and that was the first Fantastic Four thing I remember reading and just being really like blown away by it. But I didn't really start reading comics on a regular basis till years later. And funny enough, it was actually I think the first Fantastic Four comic I ever properly collected was the Matt Fraction Mike Allred FF comic, which technically isn't really a Fantastic Four comic, but
Is
it
that
introduced me to like
Ant-Man and
Ant-Man, Medusa, She-Hulk, and Miss Thing are the Fantastic Four that because the actual Fantastic Four on like a family vacation through time, so they're just supposed to be like the temporary Fantastic Four until they get back. But the actual Fantastic Four gets lost in time, so they end up having to commit to being the Fantastic Four for longer than they anticipated. And it's a really terrific story with beautiful Mike Allred art. And that really introduced me to like the Future Foundation, which made me go back and read the Hickman stuff. And there's a lot of things in there that were kind of keystones for me branching out and reading more Fantastic Four.
um here's so with me and the Fantastic Four, I didn't. Okay, so when people ask me what my first comic is, right? I don't know if I've gone through the full list with you. You know some of them because it's not just a one list sort of thing. Because the first comic that I ever like read was Tintin because my dad's comics that he passed down. My dad got them from his cousin who then passed it to me, right? So like a Tintin was like the first sequential art, but when we're talking like Batman and Superman and like American comics, um, it's tough to figure out like, yeah, what was the first comic that I read? Maybe something from the library, but I remember the first comic I bought, not with my own money, but with my parents' money. It was a Fantastic Four book. It was a Fantastic Four comic at the grocery store. And I forget what issue it is. I always have to re-look it up. The issue made no sense to me because I was going in without context whatsoever. It I don't know if you remember it, but the art on the cover is beautiful. Also, very Alicia Masters was very cheesecake. I'll say that. I wasn't necessarily looking for that when I was that young, but like it wasn't a minus, let's just say. And again, for anyone watching this episode or listening to this episode, all these characters we'll go over. Alicia Masters is blind and is the girlfriend of the Thing, now wife. But anyway, the cover was a bunch of like townspeople with pitchforks and torches, and like the Thing and Alicia Masters on the cover. And the art was by it's slipping my mind. Anyway, it would have been like 1998 maybe.
Was it a new issue of it, or was it an older issue that
No,
you found?
it was a current at that time current issue.
Yeah, it doesn't ring a bell. Doesn't ring a bell to me.
She's wearing like a pink dress skirt.
I'm doing a Google as you're describing this.
Yeah. But anyway, so that was like my first one. So I didn't understand it. And then I did watch some episodes of the cartoon on TV, but for the most part, my knowledge of Fantastic Four was limited until I watched Spider-Man the Animated Series when he had crossover episodes, right? And then I would tangentially learn about the Fantastic Four that way. But the 90s weren't that great for the Fantastic Four because they weren't extreme enough. And I think it also ties in with, as an adult, I learned to love Star Trek. Star Wars was like my big thing as a kid, but I learned to love Star Trek. And the big difference between
Star Trek is a great comparison point for Fantastic Four. Yeah.
Yeah. Not in in a lot of ways, but in a very boiled down way that like the lessons and the themes and the everything, like there's a point to the Fantastic Four, and
Well,
it's
they're
not
both
just
very
beat 'em
rooted.
ups.
Yeah, and they're both solving problems through logic and science rather than through just punching everything. Right now, granted, there is punching, um, but that is not often the priority of these characters, and that they're both often described as explorers. Right, their primary mission is to learn and discover things, and they're both rooted in that mid-century 1960s space race American optimism. Those are the kind of foundational ideals that led to the creations of those characters.
So if you were to sum the Fantastic Four up in a couple of words, not character wise, but like give a pitch to people out there,
Yeah.
why, not necessarily why they should read the comics, but like why should they be even interested in this team or this concept
Yeah.
anyways?
I think at the end of the day, everything that you love about the Marvel Universe really starts with the Fantastic Four. Not just because there are so many like characters and ideas that first appeared in their series but then spun out of it, but like Stanley and Jack Kirby really perfected their work ethic together on that book that then became foundational for the universes going forward, especially that idea of like these are heroes who have deep flaws and problems, and because of that, that makes them very relatable. And it's a cliche to say at this point. Every single trailer you watch for the new movie hits this point over the head over and over. But they are a family, and beyond just the hokey nature of them being a family, when you read them, they are written like a family that like bickers and argues and has interpersonal problems while also having to deal with these gigantic, earth-shattering crises, excuse me.
Yeah.
And because of that, you get a story that's always, for lack of a better word, fantastical and exciting, but also feels very rooted in characters that have human flaws and makes them people you can connect with and understand. Yeah, that's my pitch. That was maybe longer than you're expecting, but that is the pitch.
Yeah. I think the Fantastic Four being a family is a big thing. Also the fact that they represent hope and discovery.
Yeah.
At the same time, they still have like crazy superhero fights. They do.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
But I think they stand for a lot of the very similar things as Superman.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Definitely.
And like I think they're like the Fantastic Four are an iconic linchpin with Marvel, but I get why sometimes they disappear and they come back with a super cool run. Because the run right now, the comic book run by Ryan North, is amazing.
Yeah, it's phenomenal. It's one of the best books going right now, and I'm glad that Marvel recognizes that by like giving him a massive crossover to work in that ties directly to this book, and is now doing this big new #1. This latest issue, I literally just read it from this past week before we got on the call, and man, oh man,
I talked about that.
Made me emotional.
I talked about it on Comic Talk a couple days ago. How that was my pick of the week.
Yeah.
Where to read comics, that's like one thing. So anyone out there, if you want to find comics, go to comicshoplocator.com, find a comic shop near you. Now, if you don't have money, go to the local public library. They're bound to have comics, and they most likely will have a Fantastic Four comic worth reading. The kind of cool thing about libraries is they tend to have the greatest hits, because they don't. Libraries don't think to themselves, let's get every Fantastic Four issue known to man. They normally get like the big storylines that they know, or they look up like what are some things. So chances are you're gonna hit some big stuff.
Before we get into our thoughts on the greatest hits, should we go through each member and give our thoughts on them?
I was about to say, because Aaron is in our chat, and
what up, Aaron?
Is it Aaron King Krakoa? Aaron, I'm assuming. I've been assuming this whole time, but let us know, Aaron. It's King Krakoa, Aaron, right? Aaron says that he loves Alicia Masters, but his favorite Fantastic Four characters are Valeria Richards and then Franklin Richards.
That's true.
Which is interesting to me because I have my opinions, but let's start off with Aaron's also asking who our favorite characters are from the Fantastic Four. Let's go through the main four
Let's do it.
squad, just for people who need to know, because here's the thing: the squad relatively stays the same with the Fantastic Four, but every so often they'll throw a wrench in there, and then
You'll get a She-Hulk hanging out for a little bit.
Yeah,
You've got the great Dwayne McDuffie run where Black Panther and Storm join the team for a little bit. That's a great series. That's a very underrated Fantastic Four book. That's a lot of fun.
And then there's supporting characters like Sue and Reed's kids and whatnot. And
yes,
when I say supporting, they are more than supporting characters most of the time. But let's go through. I'll let you take it. Starting off with Reed. You kind of got to start off with Reed. Right?
You gotta. And what's interesting is when you're saying picking favorites, like for me, it kind of depends on who's writing the book in some ways, who's my favorite. Like, I feel like when Ryan North is writing the book, he writes such a good Reed Richards. And same thing with Jonathan Hickman. Like, the both of them really tap into that character in very different ways. But man, oh man, Ryan North's writing of Reed Richards, I just enjoy so much. Because it's the version of him that people sometimes say, like, oh, I don't like this character because he's like so cerebral, he's so in his own head, he's only focused on problems. But I think Ryan North has done a really good job of making that not something that dehumanizes the character, that he is thinking of these problems for the greater good of his family above all else, that he is always putting them first, and that his obsession with trying to solve problems and his way of looking at the world is all driven through the way he cares about them and loves them, which I think, talking about this latest issue, is really cemented in those last lines of the latest issue, where he's like, "With the universe was created through love," and like that makes perfect sense to me. And like that's a beautiful sentiment coming from a character who is often seen by fans as just like a cold, calculating guy who doesn't really care about his family.
Right. So just to I'm gonna rewind us just a little bit for anyone who comes into this. First thing, I don't know people's reasoning why they would listen or watch this episode and not know anything about the Fantastic Four or not know what they're walking into, but fair enough. We got 4 members of the Fantastic Four. We got Reed Richards, who's known as Mr. Fantastic. Then we have Sue Storm, his girlfriend, later wife, who is the Invisible Girl, and then shortly after is Invisible Woman. Then we have Johnny Storm, which is Sue Storm's brother, who is the Human Torch, right? So, and then there's Ben Grimm, who is Reed's best friend, who is then turned into the Thing. And each of them have 4 different powers. Reed has stretchy powers. I'm just going to super simplify it. Reed has stretchy powers. Sue Storm has invisibility and like different like force fields and stuff. Johnny Storm is the Human Torch. He's fire man, you know? And then the Thing is big orange rock guy who cannot change back to his original form. And that is a big thing. He, you know, and different adaptations do it different ways, but like he is the Thing and he cannot change back. And that's a problem.
It's an ongoing concern. Yes.
But Reed Richards is the leader and he is super smart. And, you know.
What are your overall feelings on Reed Richards as a character?
I want to, okay, before, how do I put this? Before Ryan North's run, I was fine with hating Reed Richards all the time. I understand that he is a hero that needs to exist, and I like him, but I also hated him as a person. I viewed him as just like Sheldon from Big Bang Theory.
Right,
you know?
Sure.
But now I realize he's not that, and the Ryan North, the current writer of the comic, he doesn't write him as Sheldon from Big Bang Theory. But a lot of the time in previous comic stuff, like, he's not likable.
Yes, he can often be very prickly and difficult for any writer. And I think it's because, I think Mark Waid has said this in interviews, he's the hardest character to write because he's so smart. So you have to be as smart as Reed Richards, who's one of the smartest people in the world, to really write him properly. And I think it's sometimes probably easier for a lot of writers to just write him as, oh, he's a standoffish jerk, so you don't have to worry about the science side of things as rigorously. But I think if you're writing him well, like I think Ryan North and Jonathan Hickman both do, you have to like bring your A game in terms of understanding the science of everything and how it would how it would work, and I think both those writers do.
Yeah. I I think that like when writers write really smart characters, it's very similar to writing a character like the Flash or writing a character like Superman. It's like how do you figure out like they're so good at what they do, whether it's being super fast or super strong or whatever, how do you make things problematic for them? And I think you have to balance it out with like Reed has focus issues too, right? Like
Yes.
like he'll get tunnel vision. And the idea that like the Marvel universe's most smartest person gets tunnel vision in a way. It like and that impedes his personal life, his life with his wife and his, eventual children that he has, Franklin and then Valeria. Like I think they're like Ryan North kind of straddles that line of like he's not Reed Richards isn't an asshole in North's writing.
Right, right. And now, out of curiosity, did you read the Jonathan Hickman run of Fantastic Four?
Yeah.
Okay.
I really liked it also because that was Brian Hitch's art. And so that's the one with the Marquise of Death and like Doctor Doom like dying but then coming back, right?
I think you're thinking of the Mark Miller run.
Am I?
The Mark Miller run has Brian Hitch art.
Okay, I am thinking about that, but I also did read I did read the Hickman. Hickman has
that's where you get the Council of Reeds.
That's the
that
Dale Eaglesham
on,
right?
Yes. And to your point about like giving them a challenge, Hickman's kind of like, well, the greatest challenge to Reed Richards would be other Reed Richardses who have less of a moral compass than he does and have made horrible decisions that this universe's Reed Richards would not do. And I think that was kind of a brilliant way to be like, oh, I'll show you what the version of Reed Richards you think exists is by showing you these other Reeds who the key to it that you realize is that they don't have a family. They didn't bother to like have kids with Sue. They didn't have a relationship with her that would allow for children to exist. And because of that, they are less of a hero than him. And like that is the key to him being the best version of him in all the multiverses, that he's the one who loved enough to have an actual family and to have kids. And like that when I read that, I was like, damn, that's beautiful. That's like a perfect encapsulation of why this character is not the version that I think a lot of fans think he is, because he is capable of loving more than just himself or his science. He's capable of loving his wife and his kids and his family.
I mean, I don't want to get too deep into the comics, but I think Civil War was both
detrimental. It did nobody any favors.
It was detrimental to a lot of characters, but it made it very easy to have an opinion about a character. That's the problem. As a comic fan, the dilemma of Civil War made it very easy for me to just be like, I like this character, I don't like this character. Boom.
Yeah.
And the characters were kind of written out of character.
For sure.
And so it was a little bit tough, but it made comics easier. Right? Like less nuanced and just more easy to.
You're also describing American politics in 2025.
In a way. So here's the thing: the three other characters of the Fantastic Four. Let's touch on them.
Let's get into them
before we get into the nitty gritty of each character. I mean, we can. Sue Storm. You got thoughts about Sue Storm?
Yeah, I think she is unfortunately the one who, because of sexism, has been historically underserved by a lot of the books. I think that the Ryan North run has done a great job of, compensating for that. She has a lot of great spotlight issues that are really great. And he also does a terrific job of finding interesting ways of using her powers. I think that's the thing that has benefited the character most, is it feels like every time a new writer comes on, they say to themselves, well, like, if you had the power to control visibility, what does that mean? Like, how does that affect your perception of the spectrum of light and all this kind of stuff? And another character who really, writer, I should say, who played that a lot is Mark Waid, who did a really terrific, 5-issue Invisible Woman miniseries that I would definitely recommend to anybody that I think has kind of flown under the radar. But the premise is essentially that Sue Storm has kind of secretly been doing spy missions for S.H.I.E.L.D.
Yeah.
Because her powers make her kind of the ideal spy. She can't be seen. So the story is about her getting brought in to essentially track down her former partner at Shield because he has vanished. And Mark Waid has a lot of fun playing with her powers in that. Like one thing that he does is she talks about how color is just the reflection of light in the spectrum, right? That is how we perceive color. Like we see
Right.
them as the colors, but it's just reflection of light. So she's like, so I can warp reflections of light around me to make myself look different. And she like turns her hair brunette and she gives herself like a dark tan to like totally disguise herself and blend in. It's like, wow, that's brilliant. I've never seen anybody do that with her powers, but that makes total sense because her invisibility is just refracting light. So if she doesn't make herself totally invisible, she can also alter the color of herself and other things around her. So yeah, I think that's a really great series, and it shows just like what a cool power set she has and what an interesting character she actually is.
So, I mean, she could do a lot of stuff with like invisible constructs and
Yes.
shields and that sort of thing. Like her invisibility isn't just invisibility, it's a power set that can create invisibility, but it's also like invisibility is just one of the aspects of what her power is,
Right.
right?
Right.
Um um she was originally treated as like the weakest member of the Fantastic Four, but then she's now like touted as one of the most powerful,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, unfortunately, being a woman written in 1960s comic books, she did not get the best treatment in a lot of those early stories.
Yeah. Um my view on Sue Storm has also changed as I've gotten older. But
Mm-hmm.
for a different reason. Um I just think she's hot, but also
Oh
uh,
my god.
I'm just it's more than that. It's more
My
than that.
comment about 1960s comics not
It
treating her the
it
best.
it's more than that. It's more than that. But like what I'm trying to say is like she is very strong and powerful and kind of my girlfriend knows this, right? Like I just like strong, powerful boss ladies. She Hulk's up there, you know?
Well, and I think that also plays into what a thing that I like is when they often depict her relationship with Namor is her just being like her being completely unafraid of him and his status and telling him like get your act together because we need help in this situation and being like all right sure fine, you kind of exploiting the fact that she knows that he is madly in love with her, but her being like I'm with this guy but we need your help in this scenario, so shape up or ship out and do the right thing for once in your life.
We'll get to Namor because I think that he's also one of the characters that like circles around the Fantastic Four a lot because they got a
Oh
lot of
yeah.
characters like that.
Yeah.
So Sue Storm is like the mother of the group, right? And I think
Yes.
again, I appreciate that more as I'm older. By the way, I looked it up. The first issue of Fantastic Four that I had was Fantastic Four. It was the third volume of Fantastic Four in 2001, and it was Fantastic Four number 45. And the yeah, it's exactly how I described it.
Okay. Interesting.
Oh, Carlos Pacheco is the artist.
Who was the
Um,
writer? Was that when Claremont was writing it?
I don't know. Is
Let's
it?
find out.
Well,
Uh
I don't want
oh
to
oh no,
derail.
Jeff Loeb was writing it, and Carlos Pacheco was writing
That's
it. Interesting.
interesting. Okay. Anyway, that was in the grocery store, when I was a
Yes.
kid. So it's also funny how far long ago 2001 was, but anyway. Um, Johnny Storm, Sue Storm's hot-headed brother. Now, depending on the adaptation,
You love them.
depending on the adaptation, like how old are these people? I don't know, but because sometimes they're all like the same age ish, or like Reed isn't that much older than Sue Storm, but then originally
Right.
like he was a lot older or wasn't a lot older. I don't know exactly how the ages work in this.
He is definitely a character who I always love, and there's so many like fun, hilarious things that he has done. But he's definitely a character that I think suffers the most from the regressive and cyclical nature of comics, where every time people jump on, and I'm not the first person to make this observation. This is something that Chris Sims of War Rocket Ajax often says. where he's like, every time a new writer joins in, they're like, I'm going to tell a story where Johnny learns a lesson and matures. And it's like, that's something that happens every time we start a new run of Fantastic Four. But a lot of those stories are really great. I think the one that happens in the Jonathan Hickman run in particular is really terrific. But, speaking of these characters touching on different corners of the Marvel Universe, I think one of the most fun things is his dynamic with Spider-Man. I think the two of them are such a hilarious pair. In particular, in the Dan Slott Spider-Man Human Torch miniseries that he did back in the 2000s. And anytime those two are together, it's always going to be a good time. They're a great buddy duo. If you're a fan of like the Blue Beetle Booster Gold kind of hijinks, they're kind of the Blue Beetle Booster Gold of the Marvel Universe when you put the two of them together.
Yeah, yeah. Aaron says Johnny Storm gives chaotic bi energy.
Oh, for sure. Definitely.
I don't know how I think about it. All I do know is there was a panel with him and Dakin like putting their shirts back on or something.
If they had any courage, they would do it.
Maybe for Johnny, sure. I'm not fighting for Johnny on that front. I can definitely see that. But I also think that like if they're not going to be overt about it, then it almost says something about Johnny's character being on the down low.
I think it's just that Johnny, as there's the one Ryan North issue where he falls in love with a space alien who has no real clear gender presentation whatsoever.
Yeah.
Which people were weirdly mad about that. It was very funny to see. I'm like, you got to calm down.
Yeah.
But I think he's kind of in that like Captain Kirk mode in some ways where it's not even just like he's on the down low. It's just I'm into anything and everything.
Yeah, but he's
spirit,
I say he's on the down low because he's very public about his relationships with women.
Well,
he does not shy away from relationships with women.
This is where a lot of this sort of reading of these comics is rooted in. It's like, yes, that's true, but that's also because he's been written by primarily straight presenting writers.
But you have to take it as canon.
Won't allow it. You're not wrong, but that doesn't mean that it discredits anything that, a fan would think.
It doesn't discredit that, but he's still on the down low. He's still not able to be public with, a man on man.
Maybe that's the next story that needs to be told.
Well, I do think that, like, you're right, that Johnny almost gets Flanderized, which is, like, Ned Flanders from Simpsons. Like,
sure.
Like, that's a term that somebody has come up with, like, previous to me. But Flanderization means a character, the longer they are a character, they start reverting to just a one-note sort of thing.
Right.
Joey Tribbiani gets Flanderized over time, right? Like, he just becomes dumber.
Right.
Eric Matthews. And Johnny Storm ends up just being, he's the immature one.
Right.
But immature could mean something different in your 30s than it is in your 20s or in your teens.
Right. And I think the best writers who write him recognize that, like, the key is that he just prioritizes fun over everything. Whether that's a good thing or a bad thing can depend on the situation. But I think that his sort of laissez-faire attitude towards life is part of what makes him such a good foil to the other members of the Fantastic Four. But, if you're writing him well, you can understand that doesn't mean he's like a total screw up or idiot. It just means that he has different priorities from everybody else. And this also is rooted in part in the idea that what makes the Fantastic Four unique is that they don't have secret identities. They're celebrities. That was, especially for the 1960s, a very rare and unique thing for superhero comics. Now, kind of everybody does that, especially in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. The first Iron Man movie, he comes out and says that he's Iron Man. But that is all rooted in the Fantastic Four being the first sort of superhero celebrities in superhero comics.
Yeah. I feel like just say that Johnny Storm has ADHD. That's the easiest way to push that. Like, he just doesn't see things in that same way, right? Like, he's going to jump. Right. He's going to be, very impulsive and whatnot, and lack focus,
Right.
Whereas Reed hyper focuses, which is a great foil for each other, right? But then a foil of Johnny is also Ben, aka the Thing.
Yes.
Right?
My personal favorite unsurprisingly.
Why is he your personal favorite?
He is my favorite because he is Jack Kirby's self-insert character. Like so much of who the thing is based on Jack Kirby's like perception of himself. He grew up in essentially the same neighborhood that Jack Kirby grew up in, the Lower East Side. He didn't grow up on Yancey Street, but he grew up on Nancy Street in the Lower East Side. So there's a lot of parallels. The cigar smoking comes from Jack Kirby. Like
The
there's so many
fedoras?
things. The fedoras, yeah, the dressing up, which is also why Raphael's my favorite Ninja Turtle because he's just the thing if he was a Ninja Turtle.
Yeah.
But the thing is also, I think, my favorite because he is the blue collar superhero. You know, there's a lot of superheroes like the early Superman stories where he is presented as the hero of the working class. But to me, the thing truly is the working class. You know what I mean? Like, he's the big guy, he's the laborer, he is the one who's going to have to get into it because nobody else can. But that also makes him such a great character to bounce off of other people. For a very long time, Marvel had a series in the like 70s into 80s called Marvel 2-in-1, and the premise was literally just every issue the Thing teams up with somebody. And to me, that's the sign of a great character where you're like, you could put him in any environment with any character, and you could get a fun story out of that. Like you
Yeah.
could put him in a fantasy setting, you could put him in space, you could do all these kinds of things with him, and you'll get something enjoyable out of it because he is malleable as a character. And it's also just fun to watch him react to extraordinary circumstances. One of the great issues in that run is I think it's annual number 7, where the champion of the universe is essentially having like an intergalactic fighting tournament, and he's beaten like everybody, and it comes down to him and the Thing, and he beats the crap out of the Thing, but the Thing refuses to quit. And the last pages of it are literally like the Thing like staggering and like bleeding, and he's like, you may like I may not be able to stand, but you didn't beat me because I never said I quit. So no matter what, like you can't ever beat me because I'm never going to say I quit. And it wins the respect of the champion of the universe. So he's like, this man is the true winner today because he refuses to give up.
Yeah.
And like that, love that. That's the Thing to me, and that's why I love that character.
I like the Thing as well. It's also interesting that his only technical skill was pilot. Like
yeah.
I don't know if he went to college even. Like
Well, he must have, because isn't that him and Reed were also roommates at one point? Did they meet in college?
well, that's always like I never know because like is Sue Storm a scientist?
I mean, according to current continuity, there we go. She's an archaeologist, right? That was
Yeah.
what she is in the Ryan North run. She's an archaeologist.
Yeah, but that came out of nowhere. I don't.
Hey, I think they were like, we need to give her something because I think she's had a doctorate for a while, but I don't think anyone ever said what she had a doctorate
Well,
in.
depending on the adaptation, and there have been a couple of adaptations of Fantastic Four,
Right.
like she essentially is just like Reed's lab partner in a lot, right?
Right,
like,
right.
I'm pretty sure that the 2000s Fantastic Four movies, she was just another scientist like Reed, right?
Which is an easy way to get them together.
They're
Just
all
have her
four of them
be
are scientists,
the same type
right?
of scientist. I mean, Johnny is just kind of along for the ride, which is
In
part
the
of what makes
movie?
the origin story. Which movie? Oh, I guess in the
Why were they on the ship? They were all technically scientists, right? In the movie, they didn't like steal the ship like in the cartoon or the comic.
No joke, in the comic, I think they just say Johnny's just coming along for the ride.
It's so
like
weird.
that's also like the 1960s for you. They're like, yes, let's bring this teenage boy with us as we steal a rocket ship.
So for anyone out there who doesn't know, Marvel doesn't do reboots, which means all the stories that have ever happened in Marvel are roughly in continuity unless said otherwise. Now, the thing about that is
for better or worse.
How do they keep that in check? Well, they have what's called a sliding timeline, and that is all stories are in continuity, but the specifics might change because it happened X years ago. Instead of saying what year it happened, an event happened, it happened X or so amount of years ago. So you just work your way backwards. So back in the original Fantastic Four, I think Reed and Ben were World War II vets.
Probably. Oh, almost. Or Korean War.
Or Korean War. But I remember something about World War II. But yes, Korean War. And so, but like they then stole the spaceship and Johnny like tagged along and Sue tagged, like Sue, both of them tagged along, and like Ben was the only pilot, and like, right?
I don't think they really had a clear understanding of how the spaceships worked back then. I think they were just kind of like, yeah, you could do this with 4 people, no problem.
Yeah, it's like a car. I think at that point, it's
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
and you press a button and boom, it goes up.
Whoa, there
You
it
know,
goes.
it's actually easier than a car because all you got to do is go up in a spaceship versus
You
a
just point
car.
it.
Yeah, just point it to where you got to go, which is the exact opposite of what actual space travel is. You have to point it to where something's going to be.
Right, right. You have to do all the physics of how is the Earth's rotation and the
And the
rotation of all the other
moon
things
and
in the
everything.
sky. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So just for anyone needing to know the backstory, the four of them in different adaptations, it's changed in different ways, but they go to space, they get hit by cosmic rays, they come back to Earth, and they're forever changed.
Right. As explored in the great Norm Macdonald bit about them getting their names. Have you ever heard that bit?
Is that the one like what an asshole calling himself Mr.
Yeah,
Fantastic?
he's like, and I'll be Mr. Fantastic. Like, hang on, you're gonna call yourself what? And then it just goes on like that. But it's
Yeah.
very funny.
Yeah. So like again, different adaptations will do it different ways, and they've modernized it over time, right? And they've given Sue her own agency, which is nice. I don't mean agency as in Shield, but I mean like agency as a autonomous character,
Yes.
not just the barely legal girlfriend of Reed,
Jesus.
which how is kind of how it started.
Yeah, we don't need to get into all that.
Yeah, that's not how it is now. That's the good thing
was
about
John
comics.
Byrne's fault. That was John Byrne's fault. We don't need to get into all that.
That's the good thing about comics is like it just kind of gets streamlined over time, and with the retcons and sliding timeline, it's not necessarily that anymore. But there have been different adaptations over the years, but we'll get into those adaptations in a little bit. It's hard to bring up Fantastic Four without bringing up Doom.
I mean, maybe one of the greatest supervillains of all time.
Do you think so?
I mean, I think he's up there. I think if we're doing a top 5 list, he's in the top 5, and he's probably not number 5. You know what I mean? Like, he's up there. Who else would be the competition? I guess the Joker.
For me, wait, DC and Marvel?
I'm talking all of it, man.
We're talking about iconic or my favorite, or
can you name another supervillain who's inspired one of the greatest rappers of all time? You can't.
Who's Lil Wayne based off
of? No one who I'm a fan of now. Lil Wayne's fine.
No, okay, so I know MF Doom, I get it, but like Magneto,
who's barely a villain anymore. I feel like we can't even classify him as a villain.
Magneto is such a good character that he works for any list I want to make. Like,
fair enough.
Most iconic villain, most iconic hero. I
mean, the two of them have very similar backstories in a lot of ways, and like they there's a lot of parallels between them. It's just Doom refuses to stop being petty. Doom refuses to do the right thing for anybody except for himself.
I need you to explain Dr. Doom concisely for anyone who has no idea who this guy is.
Sure.
Dr. Doom, what does that mean?
Well, I recently read, I had never read this, and I quite enjoyed it. There is a Ed Brubaker written miniseries called The Books of Doom, which gives a kind of like streamlined history of Doctor Doom and his origin story. But it was very funny when you see it all laid out. You're like, this guy's life is crazy. Because before he even becomes a supervillain, his mom makes a deal with the devil and then gets sent to hell. And that's not even the inciting incident of him becoming a supervillain.
It's not even the most important thing with
no. Yeah. Which I think sums up a lot about this guy, where it's like there's a lot going on. But he is from the fictional country of Latveria, which was just a way for Stanley and Jack Kirby to, like, I guess, do stories about Transylvania, kind of. But he is what we would now, call Romani. He was part of a nomadic tribe and forgive me if I'm saying anything that is not correct
Yeah.
or respectful to the Romani people. But in his childhood, his mother was accused of being a witch, and she was practicing magic, but not doing it for like evil, for the greater good. And she is eventually chased away and killed, and her soul is trapped in hell, which we'll get into in a little bit. But Doctor Doom essentially like swears revenge against the King of Latveria for his crimes. In the books of Doom, I'm not really sure where specifically they got this from in the continuity, but he's essentially recruited by the American military to come study in America
Yeah.
and to become part of the same think tank that Reed Richards is a part of, where they're basically like, you're going to work for us and develop weapons and technology and things like that because we can tell you're a super genius. And Doom's whole thing is that he's not just one thing. You know, your Lex Luthor's, he's all about just, science and tech.
Yeah.
Your Baron Mordo's, he's just about magic. Doctor Doom's all about merging those two things together. So it's not just that he's like a technical genius, he's also a wizard. And that is kind of what partly makes him so unique and interesting, is
Yeah.
that he sees himself as a master of all of these things. Again, making him a great foil to Reed Richards, who's kind of purely a scientist and has no interest in magic. Doom is like, I will prove myself superior to you by mastering both of those things. But what eventually happens to Doom is that while conducting an experiment in Books of Doom, it's specifically an experiment to try to open a gateway to hell to rescue his mother. But Reed Richards like looks over his notes and is like, "Hey, this all looks great. I noticed a couple like little mistakes that you made here that you might want to fix." And Doom was like, "Get out! I'm not going to listen to anything you're saying," because his ego is so great that he's like, "There's
And
no
this is pre
possible way."
Fantastic Four.
Yes, yes. There's no possible way I've made a mistake. He did make a mistake, and the entire thing blows up. And depending on your interpretation, that is the thing that horribly scarred him and drove him mad. And he blames Reed Richards for, the error. He thinks that he sabotaged the experiment to prove that he had made a mistake, even though that's not how he perceives it. So he creates a magical suit of armor for himself. He returns to Latveria, overthrows the king, and instills himself as the new ruler and benevolent dictator of Latveria. And I mentioned that thing about the interpretation because there's a famous Jack Kirby drawing where it's Doctor Doom removing his mask, and all he has is like one small little scar under his eye, implying that his vanity and his ego is so great that one small little scratch would be such an offense to him that he would have to seal himself away in a metal suit of armor for the rest of his life.
Yeah.
That's the interpretation I kind of like, but I also do like when they show him with a real messed up face. And that's Doctor Doom.
Doctor Doom's really interesting and almost, I mean, so you bring up the fact that Magneto from the X-Men has been a hero, but like Doom sometimes does heroic stuff.
That's true. That's true. He is not above doing the right thing in certain circumstances. But I think the difference between Magneto and Doom is that Magneto is often doing these things for the greater cause of mutants, while Doom is doing it for the greater cause of Doctor Doom, usually in the end. Like I think one of my favorite things is the whole dynamic between him and Valeria Richards, where
Are we
Sue
gonna
was
get into
pregnant.
who Valeria Richards is? Because
I mean, at the bare minimum,
we gotta take a
talk
step
about.
back to talk
But this
about.
is an important Doom thing. Like,
So Valeria
of,
is Reed and Sue's daughter. Continue.
yes, yes. And when Sue was going into labor, Reed was incapacitated. He wasn't there to help. Doom steps up to help just to be petty, basically to like lord it over Reed Richards for the rest of his life, and is like, I will help you if you agree to make me the godfather of this child, which they do, and he names her after his mother. Valeria is Von Doom. Valeria Von Doom was Dr. Doom's mother.
Yeah.
So he will do the right thing, but again, it is all for the greater good of what his machinations are, what he wants to see happen.
Okay. That's the thing is, like, all this stuff, it can get really overwhelming for people who have yet to. And it's like, okay, well, how do you start with this? Like, you go chronological, you go thematic, and like kind of explain this way. But yes, so because these characters have been around for a long time, Reed and Sue end up having a baby. Their first baby is Franklin Richards. Franklin Richards is a reality manipulator. So he can manipulate reality. That's his power. I don't know whether he has the powers from birth. Does he have?
Well, he was originally a mutant,
Yes.
so I think he got them. He got a little older.
Okay. So and then later Reed and Sue have Valeria. And so Valeria's thing is she doesn't have any powers, but she is super smart like Reed.
Mm-hmm.
But is she super powered in her intellect or no? And I mean, really, what's the difference? Like,
yeah. I mean, I think what's interesting about her, especially the way Jonathan Hickman writes her, is she's kind of like a middle ground between Reed and Doom, where she is super intelligent, but she also has this like cunning streak to her where you're like, it's a flip of the coin whether she's going to be a good guy or a villain.
yeah,
It's not clear which path she's going to follow at this point in her life because she has this like morality that hasn't been fully defined yet. Because in part because she is a kid, but also because like she's not sure what kind of a person she wants to be. And that's the kind of fun thing about her and Doctor Doom is that like she's always willing to give Doom a chance, even when he probably doesn't deserve it. And there's this part of Doom that's like he doesn't care about anyone except for himself and Valeria Richards. Those are the only two people that he really cares about in this world.
And I would argue, and it's all up to interpretation, I would argue that he does care about the Fantastic Four. I would
in his own sick way.
I would argue that he's so petty and has gone down the road of pettiness for so long. I would argue that he's almost part of the family. He's just
right.
He's just that bad black sheep of the family that has done too many wrong things. I don't like the Doom that a lot of adaptations can portray, where Doom is just like, I will kill you all, and I'm gonna try to actively kill you.
Right.
I like the Doom that's going on right now with like Ryan North and like One World Under Doom. So right now there's a big event in Marvel, or at least an underlying event or overlying, which is One World Under Doom. Doom is Sorcerer Supreme, whereas Doctor Strange is normally Sorcerer Supreme. Doom has now taken that mantle. He's Sorcerer Supreme of Earth and also the ruler of Earth. That's One World Under Doom. Doctor Doom rules the Earth right now. And so there's a lot of storylines that are going on right now that have to do with dealing with that. The new normal that is a complete Doom dictatorship of the world. But what I was going to say is that, the Fantastic Four step up to Doom to fight him, and he instead takes away Ben Grimm's powers. Like, he doesn't kill them. I don't like Doom. I don't like Doom that would kill the Fantastic Four.
Right. He's much more interested in defeating them or humiliating them.
Humiliation, yeah.
Proving his superiority in some capacity.
Yeah. So the alternate futures sometimes that get shown where he has completely killed the Fantastic Four, I'm not a big fan for, because I'm like, it's not as interesting.
He would much rather do what he's doing now, which is say like, I'm going to prove to you why I am actually the best person to rule the world.
Yeah.
That to him, truly winning is Reed Richards finally being like, you were right, I was wrong.
Right.
He would get no satisfaction out of just killing him. He needs him to be like, you were the right guy all along.
Do you have a list of like rando petty Doom situations? Because
no joke.
Yeah.
I did so I run a club at my school that I affectionately called the Nerd Club. It's the fandom club. And part of that is we do like monthly presentations. And I did Dr. Doom's pettiest moments.
So hold that thought. I'm gonna grab a Dr. Pepper. Before you do, tell us all about Willie Lumpkins.
I can't believe you specifically want me to talk about Willie Lumpkins. Well, Willie Lumpkins is the mailman for the Fantastic Four. He delivers their mail. He was famously played by Stan Lee in the 2000s Tim Story directed Doctor Doom movies. Or Doctor Doom movies, listen to me. Fantastic Four movies. They might as well have been Doctor Doom movies. And there was a really great Jonathan Hickman issue where they find out he has cancer and they shrink down tiny and they go get rid of the cancer in him. And it was really beautiful. It was a really good issue.
Is he still around?
As far as I know. Yeah. I mean, I don't know if he's popped up in the Ryan North run at all.
Did you mention that in the 2000s Fantastic Four movies
that he was played by Stan Lee? Oh yeah, I mentioned. Don't worry.
Yeah. Um, and yeah, I mean, talk about Fantastic Four, because they've been around a long time. They've had a lot of like rando side characters, including characters that people may know that like didn't that had like big Fantastic Four links. Agatha Harkness.
Yep. Yeah.
She babysitting Franklin?
She babysitted Franklin Richard, which is such a funny story because they just found her on, I don't know, I guess with the sliding time scale on Craigslist. And then she shows up and she's like, by the way, I'm a witch from Salem Times. Like, they didn't even hire her because she was a witch. That was just a coincidence.
It was just that she was an old lady.
So funny.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But there's...
do you want to go through the 10 pettiest Doctor Doom moments, or do you want to run through some other adjacent characters?
Let's just adjacent characters. Well, then we'll get to petty Doom stuff. But like Black Panther first appeared.
I mean, that's probably the biggest one, right? That's probably the most important one.
Is Black Panther appearing for the first time in the pages of Fantastic Four?
Yeah. I mean, obviously the Inhumans, but like, you know, depending on how you feel about the Inhumans, and obviously Galactus.
Are you an Inhuman fan?
I like Lockjaw, the big old dog, but who doesn't like Lockjaw? And I mean, it's one of those things where like they look cool, but they're not like my favorite Jack Kirby creation. You know what I mean?
And you say they look cool, but like Karnak is a weird looking guy.
He's just got a big head.
Like people talk about a 4-head being a 5-head. Karnak has a 15 head.
Yeah, Jack definitely drew that one on a Friday afternoon. It was like, all right, that's enough. I'm done.
Some artists draw Karnak like a head like a Mike and Ike, you know?
So funny.
Like, so it's funny. Not even Megamind where it's like, it's this. It's very straight up and like pill shit.
Well, and of course you get, you know, Galactus and Silver Surfer. And Silver Surfer ends up becoming, you know, a pretty prominent character throughout Cosmic Marvel in his own right, but obviously he first appears in that first Galactus story. And his creation is really funny because, you know, Stan Lee and Jack Kirby wrote their comics using what is now referred to as the Marvel method, where they would essentially like sit down together, hash out a story, then Kirby and Steve Ditko would draw their respective issues, and then Stan Lee would write in the dialogue. And Silver Surfer was not something they even discussed beforehand. It was something that Jack Kirby just drew into the comic. And Stan Lee was like, what the hell is this? And he's like, oh, it's called Silver Surfer. Figure it out. So that character is one that was very near and dear to
were
Jack
they at odds at that point?
It was getting there, because that's issue like 50-something of their 100-issue run. You know, at that point, Stan Lee's doing so much editorial stuff primarily that like Ditko and Kirby are kind of running the show on the books almost entirely by themselves.
Yeah.
It's not long after that they have their big falling out and Kirby goes over to DC.
I don't know if we preface that, but like Stan Lee and Jack Kirby created Fantastic Four, right? Like Kirby drew it, Stan Lee wrote it, but they both had creative, you know, input. Who did?
I think it's more appropriate to say that they co-wrote it together.
Okay. Does he?
Because a lot of what
does Kirby get credit for co-writing?
Certain issues are listed as like co-plotters and stuff like that, but the way they often like credit it was like Stan Lee is the writer, Kirby is the artist. But when you look at how the Marvel method works, it's like they're co-writing it. They're coming up with the ideas together, and then if you even look at some of Kirby's artwork, like the original pencils, he puts notes in the margins of like what's happening and like ideas for dialogue that Stan Lee usually took and like punched up or elaborated on. Yeah. So in my mind, they're co-writers. You know what I mean? Like that's to me is the proper way to describe it.
I'll be honest. I'll be honest. Like, well, both of them have passed, and so it's not really, you know, basically, Stan Lee is more Flash than substance. Like he kicked off a bunch of stuff, but everything you know about X-Men, it's not Stan Lee stuff.
Yeah.
Like it's not even
Jack Kirby stuff, really. Yeah, because the two of them did X-Men, and a lot of what Kirby came up with is not really used anymore either.
Not for X-Men, but like for other stuff,
yeah, for sure. You know, I always say though that like first of all, regardless of what you think of Stanley, at the end of the day, he at least put his collaborators' names in the comics, unlike Bob Kane and the way he treated Bill Finger in the creation of Batman, you
Yeah.
know? And also, I think that at the end of the day, those three guys, Stan Lee, Steve Ditko, Jack Kirby, the three of them together make Marvel what it is. You know, if one of those guys isn't there, I think a lot of those characters don't become the success that they are. So, you know, Stanley maybe took more credit for certain things that he deserved, but he was an important part of that alchemical mixture that made Marvel into what it is.
Here's something that I brought up on the previous episode that we did for DC Universe history is
Mm-hmm.
we were talking about Superman, whether he's the first hero of the DC universe or just the most iconic. And I brought it up. I said Michael Jordan is not the first basketball player, and the Chicago Bulls aren't the first basketball team, but like the impact of Michael Jordan and the Chicago Bulls on basketball or pop culture and society as a whole is unmatched. I think.
Yeah,
Like
for
you
sure.
can
No.
argue that LeBron is a better player. I don't know that much about it. I'm just saying you could argue that LeBron is a better player, Kobe's a better player, whatever, than Michael Jordan. Whatever. The arguments are moot because if we think about impact, and I think that, and this is going to go against kind of what you were saying, Stanley, Ditko, and Kirby really set up a lot of key things.
For sure.
But like, for example, X-Men being one of Marvel's biggest powerhouses, Chris Claremont is the standout
No, 100%.
Of X-Men anything, I think.
100%. Yeah, yeah. No, for sure, for sure. Which is kind of the fascinating thing about superhero comics in general, right? That it is collaborative in a way that very few storytelling mediums are, where it's essentially the same story that's being told by many, many different people.
Yeah.
And it's very fascinating to see the way that one particular artist and writer collaborating together can totally redefine how we perceive these characters. And I think the Fantastic Four are good illustrations of that, where you know they have their peaks and valleys in pretty dramatic ways. I think more than any other group of characters, you can really chart like an up and down course of, oh, why did these characters suddenly get this surge of popularity? Oh, this is when Mark Waid and Mike Widergo was writing them. Oh, what happened here? Oh, well, this is when Jonathan Hickman and Dale Eaglesham took over. Oh, what happened here? Also, Ryan North took over the book. Like they have runs that really define who they are, but it's not because like there was just a million books of them that the company was pumping out and making popular. It's because there was one particular creative team that revitalized and recaptured what makes them special.
Yeah. I want I just want a quick summation because we can't go all into Galactus stuff, but how would you pitch?
You don't want to talk about the eighth universe? You don't want to talk about
No.
Galen of Tal?
We need to boil it down to the basics, right? I'll tell you what. I'm gonna boil down Galactus and the Silver Surfer stuff down to its basic level, and you tell me if I missed anything.
Go for it.
Okay?
Go for it.
So Galactus, this Fantastic Four quote unquote villain, is a cosmic, huge entity. And he goes around world to world because he needs to eat worlds. He's the devourer of planets. But there are so many worlds out there, he doesn't know which ones to go to, so he sends out his herald, Silver Surfer. He has given Silver Surfer powers in exchange for him not eating Silver Surfer's planet. He's given Silver Surfer's powers to then surf through the cosmos, find a planet, and then come back to Galactus and say that's a planet worth eating. So he does that. The problem is the Silver Surfer appears on Earth, and he tells Earth that Galactus is coming, that you know, their death is imminent, essentially, right? So then he leaves. Fantastic Four have to figure out a way to defeat Galactus. Galactus comes to eat Earth, and in the end, I think of the first arc, right? Reed had snuck onto Galactus's ship and stolen what's called the Ultimate Nullifier, which nobody knows what it does, but essentially it like destroys. It's the only thing that could harm something like Galactus. So it like destroys
Right.
reality or erases him from the universe or whatever. And he threatens essentially like a like having a grenade in his hand in a way. Like he's like,
Right.
I'll just okay, if you're gonna eat the planet and kill everybody, I might as well just pull the pin here and you die too. So Galactus left. Right? Is that roughly the story?
No, you nailed it. You nailed it. That's the original story.
Like,
right
do
there.
you need to bring in Galentah or whatever that is? And
Well, if you want to know about the eighth cosmos,
I just think that, like, yes, it's for people who really want to get into it, right? Like,
for the real heads. It's for the real heads. Yeah.
He's
Why he's so big? We'll find out.
There's also like cool things added to Galactus. Like keep in mind, in my summation, did I even have to mention the power cosmic? No.
But it is cooler to call it the power cosmic.
Yeah, I just said he gave Silver Surfer powers. That's all he needed to do.
The power called the power cosmic.
It's called the power cosmic. The power cosmic is just the power of Galactus, and then he like constantly makes new heralds. He gifts them with the power cosmic, and it manifests in different ways. He has multiple heralds, right?
Yeah.
He has.
Did you ever watch the '90s Silver Surfer cartoon?
I did not.
It rips. It's pretty good.
It was a weird combination, right? 2D and 3D animation.
There wasn't that much 3D. Like the 3D was really just used for Galactus when he would show up, which was kind of a cool effect. But it's really cool because it has like very Jack Kirby, like John Buscema influenced art style. And they bring in a lot of like Jim Starlin stuff. Like Gamora shows up in it, and like
back then Gamora with the yellow.
Back then Gamora, yeah,
with the yellow.
exactly.
Yeah.
Pip the Troll shows up in one episode, if I remember correctly. There's a lot of cool stuff in it. It's only like one season. It got canceled. It ends on like a really bummer cliffhanger with like the Silver Surfer essentially being defeated, but because they didn't make another season, it's just like a really sad ending.
Speaking about sad endings, you know how like Spider-Man the animated series ends on a cliffhanger?
Yes,
well,
famously.
They're doing a 4-part comic series.
I saw.
That's gonna finish that off. That's crazy.
Yeah. We're finally gonna get closure.
Yeah. So a lot of the heroes, just in general, in comics, like they depend on having a good stable of like villains, right?
Right.
So we've mentioned Doctor Doom and Galactus, and I guess Silver Surfer by extension. But if you don't want to, like, other than those 2 or 3, if you count Silver Surfer as a villain, at least in the beginning, who is next up on their super villain?
Yeah, so that's kind of the interesting thing about the Fantastic Four is like when you compare them to other superhero characters, they don't have nearly as deep of a bench of villains, but they have Doctor Doom and Galactus, who are like 2 of the greatest villains ever. You know what I mean? So having like those 2 is enough to solidify them. But I think that also speaks to like what that book is often about, which is more about like having adventures and solving problems than like fighting crime. You know? But there are some fun ones. Like I love Mole Man, mainly just because I love the idea of being like, this is a tiny man who looks like Danny DeVito that can summon an army of kaiju to attack New York at any moment.
Not just kaiju.
He's delightful.
It's like the pitch for Mole Man, if I'm gonna sum it up, the pitch for Mole Man is he is so ugly but smart that he was ostracized from society and he found his way into like the deep earth crust, like
subterranea,
like through tunnels, and he realized that there are other creatures underneath Earth's surface, and he essentially rules them.
Right.
So he rules the Moloids, which are these almost underdeveloped creatures that lack eyesight. They're very similar to...
They look like Funko Pops. They got big heads, skinny bodies.
I was going to say, they kind of remind me of Morlocks, if Morlocks weren't also a thing in X-Men. Morlocks being from the time travel.
From the time machine.
The time machine, yeah. So
that's a good comparison.
Because they live deep underground, but they're not like inherently bad, but they're just humanoid creatures with no eyesight that are like bald and small and fairly
Right.
frail. And then
Yes.
there's other monsters, kind of like how Namor the Submariner. Oh, that's another one that
That's another one. We can count him as a villain for them.
you know
Yeah.
that is in the deep water, and he has like the Kraken and whatever. He
Right,
is to
right.
the water as like Mole Man is to the earth,
Oh, they should team up. Why have they never done this?
and just
That would
create
be great.
mud.
Yeah, just create mud monsters.
That's like when Hydro
Um,
Man merged with Sandman, I think.
we have who is one of my favorite villains just because he's so insane. The Red Ghost, who is a Soviet scientist who experimented on apes to give them superpowers.
So yes, I mean Fantastic Four villains, they can be kind of dumb sometimes. Red Ghost, he himself has what? Intangibility?
Yes, he can make himself intangible, hence why he's a red, and he's a communist, hence why he's the Red Ghost.
And he has 3 monkeys. He has a gorilla,
Yes,
an orangutan, and a
I think one's just a chip, but
okay.
yeah, he's got 3 monkeys that also have different superpowers, and sometimes he gets other monkeys that get other powers. He does a lot with that, but he has an army. He has up to 3 or more superpowered monkeys at different points
Yes.
in his history.
Oh, he has invisibility, intangibility, and like a mist form.
Okay, okay, there you go. Hence why he's the Red Ghost.
But he has his super apes.
Yes, I'm looking at the Wikipedia page, and I'm seeing a list of 7 known super apes
Yeah.
with different abilities.
Are we gonna go through them?
Let's do it. Miklo, super strength. Igor,
Wait.
baboon, who can shapeshift.
How not like creative is it? Miklo is a gorilla who has super strength. That's it. He's just a super strong gorilla, which is just a gorilla
He would-
plus some.
If it was Miklo versus 100 men, Miklo would win, is what we're
yes.
saying here.
Yes, Miklo wins.
Piotr, he's an orangutan who's the ability to attract and repel objects.
Yeah, Igor was a baboon who gained shape-shifting abilities. But to what degree? Like, could he... Is like Mystique? Like...
Probably.
Like James...
It would be so funny if he could turn into people, but he could still only like an orangutan.
Right. I feel like he would be like a femme fatale in James Bond, and James Bond would sleep with him and then wake up to a baboon.
Then you have Alpha, who is also a gorilla with super strength.
Yeah.
You have Beta, who is a gorilla with mind control abilities. That's just Gorilla Grodd. You have Grigori, who is a baby gorilla that the Red Ghost took as a successor to Miklo, and he possesses the same ability. So we have 4 gorillas that are just super strong, 3 gorillas that are just super strong.
Yeah.
And Yaroslavi, who's a chimpanzee with energy projecting abilities. Those are the known ones.
So, I don't care anything about Red Ghost, but it is kind of funny because he is one of Marvel's smartest villains. But like, I mean, the list is long. There's a lot of smart villains, but like,
he's just doing ape experiment.
He's just doing ape shit. Like,
yeah, he's just doing ape shit.
By the way, do you think John Malkovich is playing him in the movie?
Well, so I saw an article that Malkovich is like totally cut out of the final cut of the movie.
I don't know whether it's for certain or not.
Oh, is it? Well, the article said that he was playing Red Ghost, so I don't know if that's for certain. If that's true and he's cut out, I'm gonna be big mad. If I don't get to see his 3 super apes on screen, I'm gonna be real mad. Maybe the Mole Man's appearance will make me feel better because it seems like Mole Man is in the movie, but we'll see. We'll see how I feel.
By the way, just wanted to point out that if anyone thinks that some of these things sound similar, The Incredibles is a Disney Pixar homage to Fantastic Four, which it also includes the Underminer,
who is 100% a Mole Man reference. Yeah. Then there's El Diablo, who's an alchemist.
Ugh, I hate.
He's got a cool hat. Cool hat though.
Does he? He has like
cool
a
hat.
full mask with like those weird like hella tendrils, right?
That's why it's a cool hat. Anytime you give somebody those pointy things, like Jack Kirby would do sometimes, it looks cool. There's the Mad Thinker and his android, Awesome Andy.
Yeah.
There's I had another good one in my mind just now that
the Wizard.
Totally left my... The Wizard is another one. Yeah, I like the Wizard. He's a real freak. I think my favorite thing about the Wizard though is Bentley. his clone who's a child
Right. So
who lives with the FF.
the wizard is just super smart. He's like essentially
Right.
evil Reed Richards, and he's created tech that like gravitational discs and whatnot. Like,
Right.
you know, and then he does create a clone son who runs away, essentially.
Yes, yes. He's
Bentley
very fun.
13, right?
Bentley 13 is very fun. There's the Hate Monger, who is a clone of Adolf Hitler.
That's right. That's right.
Yep, yep, yep. Very evil man.
There's also Psycho Man,
The Psycho Man. Yep, yep.
who is a microscopic character in a normal sized robot mech body.
I forgot about that.
So
he's like Meet Dave.
Yeah, it's like Meet Dave. Yes. So he's from the microverse from like Ant-Man and Quantumania.
Right. I forgot about that.
But he pilots a human-sized mech robot, essentially.
Right.
And that mech robot has a like book kind of tablet. It's like an iPad that has 3 switches, right? And it's like 3 emotions, right?
Yeah. It's like Twitter. You just press it and you make everybody mad. But that's what it is.
It's an iPad. It's a tablet that he has.
He's the original iPad kid.
Yeah. And it's who else?
I feel like that's the major ones. Who am I forgetting?
There's just generally speaking, there's the Frightful Four.
Oh, right. But that has had so many incarnations. Yeah. So that was the Wizard, Medusa, Paste Pot Pete, aka the Trapster, and then Sandman.
Yeah. Which is weird. The Frightful Four has had different incarnations, but like the Wizard does try to create a team of 4, one of which is Medusa, who is probably Inhumans, but we hadn't met the Inhumans at that point, right?
No, and I think that was retconned that she was like being mind controlled or was like having a bad day. I don't remember what the retcon explanation was for why she was on the Frightful Four.
Yeah, I mean, I get it. I don't know what the draw would be, but okay. Then Sandman, who is a villain from Spider-Man,
right?
That joins a Frightful. Oh, and then Paste Pot Pete, who essentially his power, like his invention, is like super adhesives.
Yes, that's correct.
Which is the exact opposite of Wizard, because Wizard has gravitational discs,
right?
And
I guess maybe he would shoot adhesives. I guess he would maybe shoot the Human Torch with them. You know what's crazy about those? In those early comics, there's so many times villains are using asbestos to fight the Human Torch, and I'm like, guys, you are going to be in a world of pain in many decades from now if you keep using this asbestos.
Has there ever been a thing of that where they're like,
or a story where Paste Pot Pete's like, I used too much asbestos fighting the Human Torch? There should be.
I mean,
there should be.
I don't know if the Human Flame from DC comic, is he the Human Flame? I think from DC?
Yes, the Human Flame.
The enemy of Martian Manhunter. He's just a guy with a flamethrower. Whether he used asbestos, I think Heatwave used asbestos in the Flash.
He probably did.
You know, asbestos. It's the bestest. You know, but yes, Frightful Four. I'm trying to think of like other Fantastic Four villains.
I think those are the big ones.
Well, let's talk about Namor.
Let's get into it. The Namor of it all. What a guy. What a weirdo.
The way I distinctly say it, I say Namor, but for the MCU, I do say Namor. Because in my head, the Latino one is Namor. And that is very specifically, when I see him, he is Namor. And
he's a different guy.
This guy who is vaguely Asian, to a point. It's a plot point in the world. Yes. It's a plot point in the early comics of
Namor. You're right.
Have we talked about this?
Are you talking about the way that it explicitly says like waging a war against white men?
Well, no, there's that, but he also goes undercover in the Japanese army, I think.
Oh, really? Oh, that's crazy.
I think there's a...
Yeah, I mean, he is definitely drawn to look like he is Asian.
Yes. But...
he definitely has Asiatic features, yes.
Yeah. But I think it's also part of the exotic nature of, like, the Atlanteans. That's what they were kind of hearkening to. Exoticism, right? Because Doctor Strange is also drawn Asian in
Mm-hmm.
his first
Mm-hmm.
appearance, right? So it's like they're trying to go for like, ooh, different. It's like, okay, I guess.
Yeah, yeah.
Fine. But Namor is Roman backwards. That's
Right, right.
and that's why he
Because
just
I
yells
think
Imperious Rex all the time.
because wasn't Atlantis thought to be a Roman
Or Greek or
city?
whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I
Yeah.
think that's part of where that's coming from is the Atlantis background of it all.
Yeah. And so how do you even pit like how do you
I mean, he's
explain
Aquaman but angrier, which sometimes makes me like him more than Aquaman because he's got more edge to him.
in a way, but like Aquaman at least wears a shirt. Like Namor, no matter where he goes, no shirt, just speedo.
He does not care. He
You
does
know.
not care. He
Um.
invented the mankini.
Marvel's swimsuit specials were essentially made just for Namor.
He's like, I'll just show up in my regular outfit. Sounds
Yeah,
good.
they're everybody like, what's the dress code? Oh, just come as is. Okay.
The dress code is Namor casual. That's the dress code.
So Namor, his backstory is interesting because he was a World War II character even before Marvel existed
Yes.
as the name of Marvel. It was either Timely or Atlas that was it. Timely?
I believe it was Timely at that time. I
So
think Atlas was the name they had between Timely and Marvel.
so little known thing for some people is that like Namor is one of two first Marvel characters. Isn't it argued
Yes.
one or the other because it was the same issue?
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
the
I guess
other
which
one,
story came first?
The other one is the World War. So Namor was a World War II character or pre-World War II character, and then so was the Human Torch from that time, who was an android with like essentially like human like personality, Jim
Right.
Hammond, who when he touched the air he would ignite into flames, and then he learns to control it. But like they used to fight a lot, Namor and him, and then they teamed up against the Nazis with Captain America and whatnot. And then in continuity, Namor gets amnesia for some reason.
Yes,
And
I'm trying to remember.
he becomes homeless. I remember this because I remember the issue of Fantastic Four. Johnny Storm's walking down the street and then he looks at a homeless man and he says, "You look familiar." For some reason, he goes, "You look familiar," and then he takes his finger flame and he gives him a shave. He gives Namor a shave, and then he's like, "You're Namor," and he's like, "I don't know who
Amazing
that
moment.
is," you know. And then
Right.
Johnny throws him into the water or something like that happens, and then he gets his memory back, and it's been decades since Namor has been in the water or whatever. And then he's like, okay, I'm gonna go find Atlantis. The civilization existed during World War II, but now wonder what's up with them. He goes back home, realizes that like all the bombs of World War II and mankind's progression have essentially bombed all of Atlantis.
Yeah, it's just decimated.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's because of the surface world. And so then he declares war on the surface world. And then he later finds other, like Atlantis had moved essentially, right? And like there's different kingdoms all around. And so he takes his throne. But for the most part, I think it was supposed to harken back to like the Jim Hammond Namor thing, but then bring Johnny in instead.
Right, exactly. And I think he even has a moment where he like thinks Johnny is Jim Hammond in that story, if I remember correctly, where he's like slowly getting his memories back and he's like, "Oh, what? It's that guy." Fun fact, Jim Hammond did canonically kill Adolf Hitler in the Marvel Comics universe.
Yes.
Yeah, which is a great moment. He just burns him alive. It's hilarious.
Did you read the Ultimates?
Yes, where they reference that?
Well, you see it from his eyes. First person.
Yes. It was pretty great. Great. But yeah, no, the whole thing with Namor is he's a really fun, like, anti-hero character for the Fantastic Four, where they're never really totally sure if they can trust him. Sometimes he's on their side, sometimes he's got his own machinations. But like I said, I mean, he's very similar to Aquaman. Namor did come first. But I like the fact that he has this, you know, you can't always trust him. He's always got his own motivations for things. He's not always on the side of good. That just to me makes him a more well-rounded character. And the most recent Jason Aaron miniseries about Namor, I thought was really excellent. I would definitely recommend that to people.
I haven't read that one, but the cover art looked
It,
cool.
it's really cool because it does like it's basically like Namor trying to unite the like fractured kingdoms of Atlantis, and going through all of these trials to like win back the trust of the people. And it also does these like flashbacks to his childhood and like being raised, and the kind of tension between the fact that he is part human and part Atlantean, and his like grandfather trying to like teach him to be king while also not fully accepting him because of his heritage. It's really good. It was a great story.
Yeah. Also, a little known fact for people who are new to this whole thing: Namor is considered Marvel's first mutant. He was
Yes.
kind of retconned into that.
Yeah.
But basically stating that his ankle wings, because he has wings on his ankles. By the way, it's very similar to the Namor that you find in Black Panther 2: Wakanda Forever.
Yeah, they adapt him pretty directly for the most part. Some of the backstory stuff's a little different, but
yeah, I love him way more in the movie.
Yeah, he's great in the movie.
Yeah, like it gives him a purpose.
Yes, absolutely. And the way they portray him like moving and stuff with them, I thought was really, really clever and really well done.
Yeah,
he was great in that movie. I need to rewatch that movie. It's just so sad. I have a hard time watching it because it's so sad. I do really want to sit down and rewatch it.
Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, same thing.
Yeah.
Heavy stuff. I don't know how much time you got, but we probably wrap as we start wrapping.
Yeah, sure.
Up.
Do you want to hear my 10 pettiest Doctor Doom moments?
Yeah, and then I want to hear about. Then I want to hear about Fantastic Four affecting Cosmic Marvel, because I think that's a huge aspect of Fantastic Four.
Yeah, let's do it.
But let's go over Doctor Doom's petty moments.
From the Mark Waid Mike Winerigo run number 10, that time he turned his ex's skin into magic armor. There's a story where he kills his ex-girlfriend and then turns her skin into magic armor. You know that leather armor he wears in that story?
Oh.
That's his ex-girlfriend's skin.
Okay. Like he kills her, then he skins her.
Like with magic he does it and turns it into like a magical armor.
Okay.
Yeah. That time he blackmailed Jack Kirby and Stan Lee into making a comic book that makes the Fantastic Four look bad. That happened in one of the early issues of Fantastic Four, where he held them hostage at Marvel Comics headquarters and is like, "You're going to make a comic that makes them look like idiots." One of the great Doctor Doom stories is the Christopher Cantwell Doctor Doom miniseries. In that, he finds a universe where Victor Von Doom has like the perfect life and his like face is normal, and he's like, "How did you like do this?" And he's like, "Well, I stopped being mad at Reed Richards all the time." And Doctor Doom's like, "Screw that," and then he blew up the whole universe. Just because he's like, "I can't accept a world where I'm wrong for hating Reed Richards," and he blows the whole thing up. Delivering Valeria Richards just to hold it over Reed Richards. We talked about that. The time in the Ryan North run where he made the Fantastic Four forget every letter of the alphabet except for D, O, and M, so all they could say was Doom. Remember when he did that? That was crazy.
Yeah. It's slowly, though, right? They lose letters slowly.
Yeah, they lose letters gradually. It's crazy. The reason he became the Sorcerer Supreme, which was on a technicality, by telling Doctor Strange, "Oh, I will return the power to you once the vampires are gone and the world is safe." And then Strange gives it to him, and he's like, "The world's not safe. There's all kinds of problems. So I'm going to fix them. Bye." That time when he kidnapped the Purple Man and was using his power to control the world, and then the Purple Man's like, "I'm going to use my powers on you. Let me out. And Doctor Doom literally like takes off his helmet, like walks up to him, and is like, "You can't control me." He flexed on the Purple Man. It was amazing. Ruining his face, even though it probably wasn't that bad. We talked about that. Part of the reason his face, some people believe, is horribly scarred is because he put the mask on too soon after it was made, and it just like burned his face and got stuck to his face. That time he met a dinosaur version of himself, and then they betrayed each other because they were basically outsmarted by the Fantastic Four. Like, "You are going to betray each other. We know this." And then basically everything he did to the Fantastic Four in Battle World and Secret Wars, where he turned the thing into a wall that separated all of Battle World, and then he turned Johnny Storm into the sun, and then he made Sue Storm forget that Reed Richards exists, and she thinks that her kids with Reed are her kids with Doom. Yeah, pretty petty behavior from Doctor Doom in that series.
Yeah.
So those are my top 10.
I'm trying to think of what other petty things like Doom has done, because like, well,
When you
there's
have
also,
all that though, it's like you don't need any other villains. That's why it's so hard to name other important Fantastic Four villains.
So I'm trying to explain this from a very ground up level. So there was a crossover event called Judgment Day, and that is where this cosmic entity, this celestial, is passing judgment on every single person on Earth, and that's just every single person is tested and then judged by how they pass the test. But there's a different test for everybody on Earth. And so everybody has a little bit of different tests. Like I think Spider-Man sees like the ghost of Gwen Stacy come back and like how he deals with her. Does he pass? Does he fail? Right? But you never know exactly what the rules of the test are. You just have to do it. So the Celestial comes to Doom and he says, "Look, I will let you pass, but all you got to do is say that Reed Richards is smarter than you." That's what the Celestial tells Doom. And it says that Doom does not answer. He laughs and he turns his back on the Celestial and walks away and passes.
Yeah, because he was true to himself. He was like, I'm not going to sell out my belief for that. That was the fun thing about Judgment Day, was it wasn't like people doing the right thing. It was like, will they be true to their nature and who they are? I thought that was a really cool twist to it. I really liked that.
It's kind of sad because Captain America was judged, and because he is wearing a symbol of a failing nation that where is the American dream anymore, right? Like that whole thing, that he then fails the Celestial judgment.
Right.
And that sucks. It's not Steve's fault. Like it's sad. Like,
but that was the power of that story, was it wasn't what you would think it would be.
And it's not always fair. And who's to say what that judgment is? Yeah.
Very true. Very true.
Yeah. The Fantastic Four, I mean, we didn't even get to supporting characters like Wyatt Wingfoot, and She-Hulk is also a thing. There, Aaron, who is in our chat, by the way, shout out to Michael Mead out there for
Michael,
hopping into our chat, asking, have you spoke about Franklin taking Galactus as his herald? There is like alternate futures and like different things, and Franklin gets really powerful with his reality manipulation, and he essentially becomes Galactus with Galactus as his herald.
Well, that happens in the Hickman run too. It happens in the big final story of the Hickman run, where they use that to defeat the evil Reed.
Okay. So
yes.
Point.
And then we see that in the History of the Marvel Universe story, where like it's them in the future and him talking with Galactus.
That's right. By the way, there's also a theory that John Malkovich is an old Franklin Richards.
I mean, could be, or he's the Red Ghost and he's got 3 super names hanging on it.
Maybe.
I just want to be the Red Ghost so bad. He also looks a lot like Puppet Master. We didn't talk about Puppet Master, but he would be a good Puppet Master too.
Well, I mean, we barely talked about Alicia Masters. Alicia Masters is blind. She falls in love with Thing. She's also an artist, so she molds things out of clay, right?
Sculptor. Yeah, she's a sculptor.
She's a sculptor because she can feel it, even though she's blind. She can make things, and she falls in love with the Thing, and it's a great relationship. But her stepfather is this maniacal little person named Puppet Master who has irradiated clay so that when the clay is molded to be someone, it's essentially like a voodoo doll where he can control people through clay dolls of people. Right.
He's a real freak.
Yeah. He also looks funny. Why does he...
Yeah, well, the original Jack Kirby drawings of him kind of look like the Toy Man and Superman the Animated Series, where he looks like he is a puppet himself. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah.
There's also Impossible Man. Yeah. So you were saying, rewind to, I brought up Impossible Man.
Oh, Yeah, so in the Marvel DC omnibus, I was reading through it, and there's a story in it where it's Superman and the Fantastic Four, and it's a team up between Impossible Man and Mr. Mxyzptlk.
Yeah,
So Impossible Man is basically like their Mxyzptlk. He's like
yeah,
an imp who causes chaos with reality warping powers.
yeah, yeah. Um, so as we wind this episode down, you looking forward to the Fantastic Four movie?
Yeah, I'm very excited about it. I have a lot of feelings about this Doctor Doom thing, but
I do too. I hate it so
we'll
much.
see. I'm gonna try not to let it bother me until I see how they do it. Um,
There has to be a
but
twist.
I'm not even gonna try to waste energy theorizing or thinking about it. But I'm excited for this movie, and I'm excited Galactus is a big old dude, and I want to get that popcorn bucket, and that's how I feel.
It is a huge popcorn bucket. Like it's way
I
too
know.
big.
No, I know, but I need it. I need the
Um,
giant glass.
it's. I mean, it would look cool, but I'm wondering how expensive it's gonna be.
Probably more money than I should be spending on it. I don't care.
Like, is it gonna be just a normal like $30, $40, or is it gonna be like a
No, it's definitely not. It's
70 to
probably
100?
going to be double that. It's probably going to be, yeah, in that range. I don't care. I got the AMC stubs. I'm going to get all those points back.
I
I'll
just,
make it like a bandit.
I mean, I have a lot of points too, but like, actually, you got to make sure you can use that on merch. I'm not quite sure.
I don't even fine. Then I'll take the L. I just want the big Galactus head.
You're gonna put that head up like on display?
Yeah, probably in my classroom somewhere.
Oh, okay, okay.
Yeah.
I just when I look at it, I don't like human faces on my thing like that. It makes it look like I don't know, gross.
It's like a mouth at most. It's just like you know what? Let's wrap this up.
Yeah, yeah, Fantastic Four is super fun. I'm very looking forward to the movie.
Same.
I hope that this sort of little Fantastic Four 101, can help some people out because comics are tough to get into. You don't know where to start. And some people, if they don't have friends who are into comics, there's no reason for them to start. For two things, they can't have no one to share it with, their love of comics, but then also like you can't learn from anyone if you don't have anyone to learn from. So, hopefully this podcast helps some people and spreads the love a little bit, right? And
I will say, I also think that, if you're looking for something to read, the original issues are terrific. I think that the original Fantastic Four run and the original Spider-Man run are like two of the best Silver Age Marvel books. And they're things that had so much influence on what came after that if you really want to be bold and start right from the beginning, you can and get good stuff out of it. Granted, some of it is dated. It's not perfect.
I'm not saying it's sorry.
No, go ahead.
I'm not saying they're not good. I do think that they are dated, and
they can be dated.
It's like getting people to. I'm trying to think. Oh, getting people to watch the old Planet of the Apes movies before they get to like the new trilogy.
Sure.
It's like no, you could just start.
I mean, I like those movies.
Well, we also go back with it with a different mindset, right? But like,
sure.
Imagine you're trying to get into that idea. I don't know whether that first movie is going to be for you.
Yeah, fair enough.
But like, if you had a modern run that you would recommend, what would you recommend to get into Fantastic Four?
I mean, the Ryan North stuff is great. I would say definitely check that out. It's hard to deny that, and it's easy to find because it's so new. The Jonathan Hickman stuff I think is really terrific. I would always recommend the Mark Waid run. Walt Simonson did a short run that's really cool. Like there's one issue where Doom and Reed are fighting through time, and then as the story of the issue is playing out, Reed and Doom keep appearing in like the gutters of the panels, but they're out of sequence. So like you can read the comic from one end to the other just sequentially, and then you can go back and flip around and watch their fight play out in the like proper order because it's all time stamped.
Yeah,
it's like very clever and very, very cool the way it's laid out. But he also did the famous issue kind of poking fun at 90s comics where the Fantastic Four becomes Spider-Man, Ghost Rider, the Hulk, and Wolverine. And they're like, this is the world's most profitable comic because we got the four most popular characters in it. That was a good one too. So,
yeah,
it's good stuff.
I do think yeah, easy answer is Ryan North's current
Yeah.
run, right?
Yeah.
They're only on issue 33, I think, right now.
And it's about to start a new volume with a new
Yeah.
number 1.
So definitely read this one. But I also think that, look, if you are the type of person that wants the science fiction, but you want it hip and cool, I think the hippest, coolest science fiction one is the Mark Miller Fantastic Four run. If you want something with the Marquise of Death and like the future, the characters that come from the future, like the Hooded Man, and
Right.
I won't spoil who the Hooded Man is, but like that storyline, like those are definitely like hip, trendy kind of Fantastic Four stuff. They're if the Fantastic Four were just cooler. Like
I don't think they should be cool. I think they should always be a little dorky. The Fantastic Four, but that's why they're great.
Yeah. Would you consider that a bad run, or it's not?
I've never read it. Mark Miller's not really for me, and I haven't really gone back to check it out. If I'm being honest, I know some stuff about it, but
Mark Miller within parameters, like if you set him up with guidelines, I like to see where he goes with it. But when he has the whole thing to play with, oof, it gets wild real fast. It is what it is. But I'm looking forward to the movie, and I'm a little upset I don't get to see it with you. So,
well, we can chat about it at some point. Okay. We'll chat about it.
Or we FaceTime while we're both at the movie, and we're like, hey!
I'll set my phone down next to my seat, and you can just watch it. There you go.
Everybody around you is like, what the hell?
You bought a whole ticket for this?
Thanks so much for coming on this and talking about the Fantastic Four.
Of course, happy to.
You were my number one pick for this. So,
thanks, dude.
I gotta, where can people find you? What do you got coming up? Anything you want to plug?
Well, I do kind of have a thing to plug. Well, you can find me on Blue Sky. That's really the only social media that I use these days. But in August of 2025 at Anime NYC, I will be doing a panel called Teaching Anime and Manga Across Curriculums with a few other educators. We will be presenting on Friday, August. I'm just double checking on the calendar here. We'll be presenting on Friday, August 22nd. I believe our panel starts at 2:00. It goes until 3:15. But also just be hanging out at the convention that whole weekend. And I think I'll be doing sort of like meet and greet Q&A discussion thing for any educators, because that's their educator day. Anime NYC now has an educator day like New York Comic Con does. So if you want to discuss some of the ways I use manga and comics in my classroom, specifically my graphic novels class that I teach, feel free to stop by. We'd love to chat with you about it, or just come by and check out the panel.
Awesome. I'm really jealous, but also I might be over there for New York Comic Con. That's the goal.
There you go.
Hopefully things work out there and we can hang out there.
We'd love that.
And we still go to a movie and FaceTime each other.
We'll just next to each other on FaceTime.
This is just egregious,
This is just inconsiderate to other people.
Thank you so much for coming on the show. Thank you to everybody out there for watching. Aaron, I know you're out there. Michael Mead, I know you're out there. If anyone was out there watching us, you were watching us on youtube.com/The Keeg Show or twitch.tv/The Keeg Show, or wherever you get your podcasts from, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google, whatever, Audible, Amazon Music, SoundCloud, that sort of thing. So we are on all them. Thank you for however you're digesting us. Like, comment, subscribe, follow, write a review. However you're digesting us, let us know you're out there. If you're looking for me personally on social media, find me at This Is Dimithri on Instagram, or better yet, you're trying to find the Keeg on social media. You can find the Keeg at The Keeg Show on all social media platforms. TikTok and Instagram are two biggest ones, but we're also on like Blue Sky and Threads and all that. At The Keeg Show /The Keeg Show, wherever you can find the Keeg, we are there. Also, go to comicshoplocator.com, find a comic shop near you, one that you vibe with, one that you connect with. As long as they're cool and you're cool and everybody's having a good time, comic shops are worth going to and worth supporting. So support your local comic shops out there, and support your local public libraries. Whether or not they have comics, and 99% of them do, they still deserve our support. So if you're looking for comics and you want them to be free, check out your local public library. Also, I think they give, like, with a library card, they give, like, access to different apps and stuff, so you might be able to get free comics that way, too. So, a lot of cool stuff out there. That is pretty much it. A lot of cool things to come, including San Diego Comic-Con. I still don't know whether I can officially say anything or not, but, stay tuned for more information about that. That's pretty much it. Once again, I am your host, Dimithri Pereira, and this has been the Keeg Talks, Fantastic Four 101. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Super strong or super fast.